Hello everyone, this is Chris with Marksman Shooting Sports back with you again today with the Walther P38. Specifically the P38 that was used during the Second World War by the German military. There were three main manufacturers that produced the P38 pistols for the German Army during the Second World War, and that was Walther, Spreewerk, and Mauser. I have an example of each here for you to go over. Also, I brought a Luger just so we could kind of go over the developmental changes from the P08, which is the Luger, to the P38, kind of the reasons why they did that. Also, this could be a little guide for you if you're thinking about picking up a Walther P38 for yourself, some things to look for, some different variations between the three manufacturers. Give you a little bit of information when you're out there looking for that pistol for yourself. So I'm going to go ahead and bring in the camera and we'll go through these three examples here for you today and give you a quick overview. Okay, so I have the camera zoomed in here for you. I of course have three examples of the P38 and I do have a Luger. Real fast, this Luger is made by Erfurt, and that's, I guess, one unique way of pronouncing it, which was a common manufacturer for the Luger during World War I. We're not really here to talk about the Luger. That was just a quick overview of what this is. But I do have a P38 from the three main manufacturers of the P38, or I guess I should say the only manufacturers during World War II, which is up here at the top is a Mauser. Right here in the middle is a Spreewerk, and right over here is a Walther. Okay, so real quick, I'm going to go over kind of the evolution of why they went from the Luger over to the P38. So here I have the Mauser made P38 and I have the Luger here. Real quickly, why did they go from the Luger to the P38? Well, the P38 is, as of the time that World War II is beginning to ramp up and Germany is thinking about invading Poland, the P08 Luger was the main service pistol that was in the arsenal for the German Army. There were a couple problems with this handgun. It was an excellent, very, very well-made firearm. However, there were some quirks when you're considering its practicality as a combat weapon. The two main reasons, or the two biggest quirks that Germany wanted to get around, was speed and cost of production. So the Luger was a very expensive firearm to make. It required a lot of hand fitting, made mostly entirely of machined parts. It has a lot of parts in it. It's very complicated, and it's of course the pinnacle of German engineering. Way more complicated than it needs to be, but still a very, very fine firearm, especially for when it was first conceived in 1908, or at least introduced into the German Army in 1908, during, right before World War I, which for the time frame, this was a revolutionary pistol. But getting into World War II, it's kind of starting to show a little bit of its age, which also goes into the other thing, is that due to the complications of this, it was very, very expensive to manufacture. They needed something cheaper, more efficient, quicker to make, easier to replace parts on, and easier to work on. That is why the contract went out for a new service pistol. Ultimately, the P38 by Walther won that contract, and it became the new German standard issue sidearm from 1938 on. Up until about 1945, actually April of 1945, when all the three major plants were captured at the end of the war. Some other features that actually were really revolutionized when the P38 came about was things like having a hammer being on single or double action fire. It allowed the operator to carry if they wanted to, and you'll actually see this on a lot of common firearms, like a Beretta rings to mind, a Beretta 92 or an M9, where the person carrying the firearm could chamber around, thus bringing the hammer to the rear. Then they could put the firearm on safe and drop the hammer. It was a decocker safety. That was optimal for being able to carry it around in the chamber. You could carry the weapon on safe. And if the person wanted to, they can draw the weapon, flip it off safe, and then do that double action trigger pull. The gun would of course go into recoil, restaging the hammer into a single action mode, allowing it to fire again on a much lighter, easier trigger. Other innovations, where I'll bring this in for you, is it did have a loaded chamber indicator, something that was a very new concept at the time. Again, that really kind of an early innovation. The Luger, on the other hand, was a toggle locked pistol, and it only had one trigger pull mode. It did not have that hammer. It did not allow for follow-up shots. That was something else, that if you did have a round that misfires, you can go ahead and pull the hammer, or I'm sorry, pull the trigger again to get it to try and fire a second time. With the Luger, you did not have that. If you had a bad round, you had to manually extract it. And of course, you just had that one trigger pull weight, and there was not a lot of customization in terms of being able to stage a hammer or anything like that, double single action. Now that I've given you a quick overview of why the transition was made between the Luger to the P38, I'm going to focus specifically on the production of the P38 itself. Okay, Walther, which I have here at the top, was the main contractor. Of course, it was their design, and they were contracted to build the most. And I do have a little cheat sheet over here I'm going to pull over. So Walther did make 584,000 of these handguns, but also there were two other contractors. There was Spreewerk, which I have here, and then Mauser, which I have here at the bottom. Mauser made the second most of them at 323,000, and Spreewerk made 283,000. So combined, there was about 1.1 million of them made by the end of the war. In terms of collectability, collectors do place a premium on one over the other. However, if you're looking at all three, in terms of if you're looking on Gunbroker or anywhere else to pick one up for yourself, you're not going to see a huge pricing variation between the three manufacturers, all else being equal. What I mean by all else being equal is if they're, if they're reasonably the same finish quality, original finish, if they're not import marked, not capture marked, if they have all matching parts, and I'll go into all this. Typically, you're going to see the Spreewerks at about the cheapest. That's these guys, followed by the Mausers, followed by the Walthers. For whatever reason, even though Walther made the most of these, collectors do tend to hold these at a little bit of a higher premium. And does that mean that these are, going to be $2,000 and a Spreewerk is going to be $500? No, it's typically, and I'll probably catch some differing opinions over this, but based on my recent research, again, 2017, an all-matching, excellent condition Spreewerk might cost in about the $700 to $900 range. A Mauser might be up in the $1,000 range, and then a Walther might be up in about the $1,200 range, respectively. I know that there are other deals out there, and some other people's experiences might vary, but me, having spent a lot of time on Gunbroker looking at P38s, these are all mine, by the way, that's generally the trend that I see. So let's talk about the markings. So as many of you may know, and if you don't know this, this might be new information to you, Germany, the manufacturers of German small arms during the war did not stamp their names on their firearms. In fact, Walther, when they first released the P38, did put the Walther banner on the firearm, and you can still find those, and those are sold at a pretty large premium. They're pretty uncommon because after original production, putting those Walther banners on the firearms, they stopped doing so in place of a code. And each manufacturer of every firearm used in the Second World War was given a code designation, usually 2 or 3 letters or maybe a series of numbers which would indicate that particular plant or manufacturer. That was done in order to confuse the Allies so that, for example, if a German officer were captured and his P38 was taken off of him and they looked on the side and saw a Walther banner sitting there, then they would know, okay, Walther is obviously making these firearms, so we need to target and bomb the Walther plants. Subsequently, it didn't take too much time into the war before the Allies really started deciphering what these codes meant anyway. And towards the end of the war, all the major plants were bombed anyway. But it was just kind of the Germans' way of trying to at least kind of sneak into how that they can code or hide the manufacturers who are producing the small arms for their military. Getting into the codes, Walther, and this is going to be true on their pistols as well as they made G43 rifles, K43 and G43 rifles. Their code designation was AC, that's Alpha Charlie. So if you see an AC code, then you know it's a Walther. Mauser down here was given the code BYF. That was the code also put on their Mausers or any other of the small arms that they made. That was BYF. And then Spreewerk, and correct me if I'm wrong, only made P38s. I don't believe that they were contracted for any other small arm. They were given the code designation CYQ. So anyway, if you see that code AC, BYF, CYQ, you know it's a Walther, Mauser, or Spreewerk. Okay, let's talk about quality, and this is probably why collectors put a little bit more of a premium on, say, a Mauser or a Walther and less of a premium on a Spreewerk. Spreewerks were made It's kind of like the Remington Rand of the 1911 world. They were fine, they worked, they met all the specifications for manufacture, but they were pretty hastily and shoddily built. You will see, and I'll bring this up here real fast, this is a Walther, this is the Spreewerk. You'll see what looks like, now pay no attention to the finish, it has more to do with the age, but you'll see very heavy machining marks all throughout, especially here on the frame, here on the slide. On the Walther, it's a very nicely smooth, finished, and polished firearm. And actually, this still says a lot because this is a late war. This is late 1944 when actually production, and by the end of 1944, by the end of 1944 or early 1945, a lot of the production quality was going way downhill. Of course, Germany was losing the war, so they were just churning out the firearms as fastly as they could. There was still actually a pretty good amount of attention paid to detail, of course, being German manufacturing, as opposed to, say, in Japan. Like, if you look at late war Japanese guns, you will see a massive decline in the quality. Not so true with German firearms, but you can still see that. For example, you'll notice in this P38 that there is actually kind of a bitone look to this. It's a very deep blued finished slide where you'll see the frame is a very plum color. That wasn't made that way, and this is an all-matching gun. The frame and the slide were built at the exact same time. They used a slightly different finishing process on the frame, and from what I gather, the finishing process, there was I guess a fault in the salt bluing technique or something like that over the years allowed it to turn to a plum color. Again, an indication usually of a late war Walther P38. Another thing too is you'll notice, and I don't know if you'll be able to pick this up, back on the serial numbers, the stampings are very, very light and faint. Typically not what you see on German small arms, except during the end of the war. Just their stamping dies and everything, they were just hastily stamping them out, so not very crisp. Again, very minor variances, but still an indication of hastily built late war gun. Other than just looking at the production codes, other markings that you'll usually see on German small arms are the inspector's proof marking, also known as Waffen amps, or an eagle followed by a number, or an eagle on top of a number. Every manufacturer and their plants had different inspectors. Now, it's not like a manufacturer's code. What that actually is the ordnance inspector, the actual person, has a stamp, and it's known again as a Waffen amp, and it's an eagle over their specific number, and that number designated that inspector. Sorry to be long-winded on that. Anyway, so for example, on the Walther P38s, the inspector for the Walther plant who was inspecting the P38s, his inspector code was 359. So you'll find the codes, and you're not going to probably be able to pick this up very well, but Eagle 359 here. Let's see, I'm going to search for these here on camera. An Eagle 359 on the frame. And if I open up here on the breech lock, we'll find an Eagle 359 proofed on the barrel. And also in here on the locking block, an Eagle 359. And we can even go so far as to look at the magazine, which is also Eagle 359, stamped right here. So we know that this is a Walther made magazine and an all matching by proof and by serial number Walther P38. Okay, the next we'll look at is the Mauser, and that's the Eagle 135. Again, you're going to find those markings in the same place, Eagle 135 for the Mauser. And then the Eagle 88, which you'll find here on the Spreewerk. That was their inspector code. Eagle 88 here. So you get the idea. Grips, you typically found two styles of grips. That would be this kind of reddish Bakelite. There is also a black Bakelite. I don't have black Bakelite grips on either one of these three, but this is a good indication of a kind of the reddish Bakelite color. Now let me get into a disassembly here. We use the Walther. So disassembly, if you've ever handled a Beretta 92 or M9, you're going to see something very similar. So we'll start by locking to the rear, and we know that we're empty. I'm going to remove the magazine. Then on this side, there is a takedown lever here. I'm going to go ahead and flip that down and around. Drop the slide very slowly. Then when it gets there to about the end, where these two ends meet, or I'm sorry, where the frame and slide meet flush with each other, I'm going to go ahead and drop the hammer. That will allow the two parts to separate from one another. In here, this is my locking block, and I do have a button here that I will pushing up that locking block and allowing me to remove my barrel. Okay, places that you're going to see serial numbers, and this is true of all the manufacturers, is you will find, of course, your serial number here on the frame. And as you may know, Germans were very particular about serial numbering every part that they really could. Even like on K98s, you'll find the action screws are serial numbered. So anyway, on a P38, you'll find a serial number here on the frame. Of course, you'll find it here on the slide. Right on the front of the barrel. And those are the three you can see from the outside of the gun. And there will also be a number on the locking block. So every separate part, there's going to be a serial number which should all match. If those numbers are not matching, any one of those numbers are not matching, it's a mismatched gun, and you should consider the value quite a bit less. Another interesting thing about the standardization of a manufacturer is any of the parts from any of the three manufacturers will be interchangeable. So here I have my Walther P38 disassembled and here I have my Mauser P38 disassembled and my Walther P38 disassembled. I can, for example, take my frame from my Walther, my slide from my Mauser, and I'll just grab the barrel from the Walther. And what I can do is I can go ahead and reassemble the firearm with mismatched components. And there it is back together with mismatched parts from different manufacturers, and it is still functional. One final thing, I'm going to go over kind of the two most common holsters you're going to see with the P38. Right over here I have my Walther and this P38. It's a black leather holster, a kind of a cattle leather holster, and here on the back, again, we'll see the big stamping. You'll know, no question about it, P38. And of course we have up here the manufacturer's code, which is GXY. I don't know what that stands for. I'm not a huge expert on the leather. There is a Waffen marking, an inspector's marking here for the leather, the manufacturer of the holster. And this was dated 1941. And then we also have initials that were scribed into here by whomever, maybe the original owner of the pistol, who knows. If I open the holster up, we'll see the pistol here. There is a draw loop here, so I can pull on this to retract my pistol and pull it out. And then you'll just see kind of the inside of the holster here, just kind of standard stitching, and there is a little slot here for a spare magazine. Moving over to a second variation, and these are a little bit less common. This is a pigskin holster, and it's kind of got a pebbled texture to it. Okay, if I look to the rear, again, we will see the P38 marking. We have the code CXB and a Waffen amp, which is kind of a little bit worn out right underneath for the inspector of the holster. If I turn this around and open it up, we'll find the pistol inside. You can reach in and pull it out. Of course, give you a closer look at that, and I do have a spare magazine pouch here. Thank you all for watching. If you have any questions, please be sure to reach out to us in the comment section or through our Facebook page, and I'll be happy to answer any of those for you. This is intended to be a part 1 general overview of the pistols. I will be doing a part 2 in which I will be taking these out to shoot. I don't have access to a range where I can really set up a camera. I do have a buddy that we shoot at his house from time to time, so I will be going out there soon to set these up and to pop a couple rounds off for you guys, so you can see them in action. I will shoot all three. We'll go over the kind of differences and the performance of each, check out groupings, that sort of thing. Anyway, thank you guys so much for stopping by. Please be sure to subscribe and like if you enjoyed, or leave us a comment if you have any feedback or anything we can improve on. Thank you very much.